Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Louis Long, and I'm the owner of the Long Gallery Harlem, which is located 2073 Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard. That's between 123rd and 124th Streets in Harlem. I am excited today to welcome you to the talk with Harlem One Stop, the Salon, related to the Harlem Renaissance, with a detailed discussion with artists in the exhibition Styling Black Expression, Rebellion and Joy Through Fashion. This exhibition is a escapade through the multifaceted representations of contemporary Black style and their cultural significance. The exhibition celebrates the legacy of using personal style to channel self-expression, rebellion, and joy as inspired by movements such as the Harlem Renaissance, thus giving substance and expansion to the meaning behind making a fashion statement. The exhibition at Nordstrom has been co-presented with Nordstrom and curated by Souleo. Works by the artists in the exhibition may be purchased on Artsy, our exhibition presentation partner, and a portion of art proceeds will benefit the Howard University Art Gallery and student programs. I encourage you to visit the Long Gallery website for more information. That's www.long.gallery. This exhibition closes on Thursday, September the 29th. So you still have a little bit of time today. Nordstrom closes at 6 p.m. On Monday through Thursday this week, they'll be open from 11 to 7:30 p.m. And that's an opportunity to visit the store at your will to enjoy the exhibition. And then also I invite you to visit the Long Gallery window exhibition that's also on view at the current time, and it's called Passing Through Time. And that's inspired by Nayla Larson's book, Passing, that was written also during the Harlem Renaissance. But today we're here to talk about styling, and I'm really excited to first begin with a video which gives you a tour of the exhibition, and then we'll follow with a great conversation that you'll be able to participate in with the artist. Thank you for joining us today.
Nordstrom invited Long Gallery Harlem to present an exhibition in their flagship NYC store. And I've worked with Louis Long of Long Gallery a couple times, and so he invited me to curate the exhibition. And so when we had our conversations about what would we present in the space, we wanted something that would tie into what Nordstrom is, which is a fashion retail store, but that also spoke to the issues of today. And so it's 100 years since the Harlem Renaissance. It's a centennial. And so we wanted to definitely pay homage to that, but not in a very obvious way. And so when you think about the Renaissance and what it represented, it was challenging the representation of Black people in America through performing arts, through visual arts, literary arts, and through style. The way that they dressed during that time was a statement. And so I wanted to look at what is Black style like since then? What does it mean? What does it represent? And so the exhibition is organized across 3 different themes. Black expression, which looks at the ways we've always creatively expressed ourselves. And we're going back since the beginning of time. We're not starting with post-slavery because our narrative begins prior to that. We look at Black rebellion, the ways we use style as a way to make political statements and to challenge societal norms and oppression. And then we have Black joy, which you can see sort of behind me. These Afro wigs really sort of epitomize that. And it looks at the ways that we have always found dignity and pride and joy in how we represent ourselves. So I don't know if you can tell what these are made of, but take a wild guess. They're actually made of what I'm wearing, do-rags. Yeah, so Anthony works with do-rags. When you think about do-rags, you know, in the 70s, they gained popularity as a way to protect our hair, but also as a way to tame it, to make it fit within Eurocentric standards of beauty, right? And then in the 90s, with hip-hop, it gained more mainstream popularity, but it also got the negative connotation of black thug male energy. And then today, it's on the Met Gala red carpet with Solange Knowles and other people. So it's become more mainstream acceptable, also more commodified. But for Anthony, he takes the do-rag and creates these do-rag paintings, stretches them across the canvas. And so they become abstracted works of art. This one is probably my favorite just because of the beautiful different textures that pop out. And then I also love that the do-rag is hanging off the ends of the canvas, so it's almost like paint that's dripping. But when you see do-rags in these pops of color, it challenges you. It's like, oh wait, I didn't know they had lime green or purple do-rags, and people are drawn to those colors in a way that is different than looking at a black do-rag as well. So this is Margaret Rose Van Drise. And so these are part of her African Diva series, where she takes commercial images of black celebrities and she paints them. And so I don't know if you can guess who these folks are, but who's that? That's Billy Porter. Shirley Bassey. Shirley Bassey. A clue, read the handwriting that the artist put in the paintings. That's Eartha Kitt. You see Santa Baby, Sissy Boom. And so with these works, she adds an African mask to them as a way to deify them and to celebrate the impact of black celebrities in style. We don't, you know, they don't always get credit, but they are major influences of mainstream style. So as we put the show together, there's a lot in Nordstrom to visually compete with, but wanted some smaller, intimate works to really pull you in as a viewer. And so these are works by Ilan Cadiz. In this work, we have different people that she has been painting since the pandemic. So she has about 115 portraits, and she takes a photograph and paints them using 3 different types of paint. She started working on this during the pandemic. Yeah, because she was like many artists who found themselves like out of work, you know. She was furloughed, and so she needed something to do, and this was a way to do something that was uplifting as well. This collection really represents just a range of different black style. You have the sort of a regal flamboyance of this. You have a sexy summer dress. You have this woman who's wearing Doro Oluwu, a Nigerian designer. And then you have Bun, who is a famous hat maker in Harlem, whose style, echoes like the Harlem Renaissance and that sort of 1950s aesthetic. And so this is just a celebration of us and our creative expression and our styles of many different ways. I don't come from a traditional sort of pipeline. I didn't study art history in college. I actually, as a kid, didn't like museums. And when I look back at it, it was because I wasn't seeing a lot of representation of who I was in my culture. And it was when, my brother who passed away, he was a visual artist. And then my partner, Bo McCall, he's an artist. And when I started looking at their work, I said, wow, they have such great work. And I started exploring other artists. And one of the things that spoke to me was looking at art not just as a painting, but as wearable art. And so I've always loved style, always loved fashion, and it's an art to that as well. And so when I expanded my scope and definition of what art is, that got me more interested in being a curator because I could see that there was a lot more to the art world than just a painting or a statue. There's so much more. So these are designs by Epperson. He's an artist, designer based in Harlem. He's also been on Project One Way in like some of the early seasons. And so in his work, he definitely likes to reject the tribalism of mainstream styles. So you'll see that he mixes different silhouettes, sometimes within one outfit, sort of like this sort of exaggerated form here on the silhouette. He also upcycles, so he'll take different materials and piece them together in a very refined way. And for him, the fashion is like, it's armor, it's protection. So you'll see that with this piece that almost looks like a shield and the gauntlets on the arms here. So he sees style as a way to protect ourselves and to also give us the confidence to be who we want to be in the world.
These pieces right here, these are like women that are on the front lines, you know, sort of like they're warriors, like they're layers and layers and layers. It's like survival, you know, like they just put it all on and here we are standing. We're standing strong, we're standing together. I'm designing a lot of times when I'm sewing, you know, so I'm creating as I'm going. I mean, there's a lot of times I do sketch, I sketch out the whole collection and then go fabric shopping or fabrics that I picked up prior. I said, oh great, I can use this piece. This piece is coming in perfect. Like even, like there's a lace piece right here. It's like sort of distressed looking. You know, it's like, it's romantic and distressed at the same time. Then like the piece that's underneath, that was like from my spring collection. You know, so I can mix them. You know, we're mixing everything now. The seasons are all like one season almost. So, you know, it's from like cottons to wool gabardines to different wool, you know, different types of wool, knits, like a boiled wool. Then there's like a cotton dress, ruffles, and the other layers of cotton, just layers of black cotton. That's how I dress, layers. You know, it's like you put it on this way today, you put it on that way tomorrow.
So this is Elaine Rodriguez, and this is her installation. She made everything within this work. And so this is about the Haitian Revolution. It's an homage to the ancestors, those who were enslaved, those who did and did not make it. You can see on the side here, she has a screen print of the abolitionist medallion. And you can see the way that fashion can be used to transmit history and to uplift the ancestors. When you think about art, wearable art sometimes gets left out of the conversation. And so actually in this store, there's tons of wearable art on the racks. You have so many amazing designers who create really beautiful couture pieces. And so to bring in other wearable artists, those who have not had a platform such as this yet, and those who are just as deserving, was really a wonderful thing. So one of the major themes to the show is rebellion. And one of the works that really epitomizes that are these works by Beau McCall, specifically the triple t-shirts. And so the triple t-shirts, they can be worn 6 different ways. But when you think of a t-shirt, it's a statement, it's a billboard. And so on these shirts, he has Black Lives Matter, which is about the political climate of today and the social justice movement. Then here, we want our 40 acres and a mule, which echoes the call for reparations today. What I love about these works is that they're fashionable, but they're also in your face, making very strong, bold statements about where we are at this point in society. We've always used style as a way to make a statement. It speaks for us even when we can't vocalize what we want to say as well.
People call me the button man. People call me Sir Buttons. People call me Count Buttons. But I am Beau McCall. In the fashion world, this part of a dress or a part of a garment is called the yoke. So I simply call them yokes. This one is yellow buttons, beige, brown thread. The color scheme is like chocolate brown, red, light blue, and yellow. So I cut away the jacket to give it a new effect. So with this new effect, you can wear these on top of t-shirts, you can wear them on top of dresses, you can wear them actually on top of a coat. These shorts I did back in 1995. So you can see they're still relevant, they're still fashionable, and they still make statements. This is about a month, about 3 weeks. So I start out with a color scheme. I separate my buttons into colors. I pick out my thread, what type of thread that I'm going to use, the color schemes of thread. I'll have a section of plastic buttons, wood buttons, leather buttons, depending on whatever the theme is. The thread plays a major part in how the buttons are going to be placed and what the end result is going to be with the contrast. With the current pandemic going on, it gave me more time to focus and more time to actually sit and focus and dedicate more hours to certain pieces. Years ago, I was working, I had other, projects that I was working on, so I could only dedicate myself to a certain amount of time. This time I could sit here for 12, 14 hours. This is a major step for me because there was a time where black folks were allowed in these type of establishments. So right now I'm grateful that I'm here and that I'm exposed to a different level and clientele of people who get a chance to find out who I am, what I'm about, what I do, where I came from. The people here are great. You come in, everybody speaks to you. It's like you're in Cheers or something. Because I'm in here a couple times a week, and every time I come in, hi, how are you? What's going on? We like the exhibition. And I'm being received very well, so I'm enjoying it.
When you think about Nordstrom and what it represents and the major platform that this is, I think it's a great opportunity for the artist, for myself, for the gallery, to be able to, have a platform like this where we can gain more visibility and more support for the artists. And one of the most important things in putting this collaboration together was that the artists were economically empowered. So we made it a point, and Nordstrom was very supportive in this, to ensure that the artists received an honorarium just for participating. And then in addition, Nordstrom gave us some generous square footage space for a pop-up shop, which presents another opportunity for the artists to generate income. And during this pandemic, there aren't a lot of creative outlets for artists to generate income because a lot of museums are closed or scaling back. And so this was really important to support them.
Well done video. Thank you, Harlem One Stop. We are now ready to introduce you to the artists of the exhibition that are with us this afternoon. We have Epperson, if you can come on screen. We have Ruben San Miguel, if you can come on screen. And we also have Diane Smith, if you can come on screen. Good afternoon.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
I first want to introduce Epperson. Epperson began his career in fashion by following by following a crush to design class. He desired to be near a beautiful girl led him to his life's work. Since then, the Harlem-based designer credits amongst his clients Alicia Keys, Vanessa Williams, Erykah Badu, and Patti LaBelle. Epperson was featured in the Museum of City of New York's Black Style Now exhibit and was highlighted amongst a handful of designers for the fashion anthology American Beauty by Patricia Mears. He's been a longtime collaborator with the Complexions Dance Company and was commissioned to design custom costumes for the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater and Juilliard Dance Ensemble. Most recently, Epperson partnered with the Francesca Harper Project to design costumes for the Lemon Dance Company. He currently services a private clientele and operates a developing wholesale business. Great to see you, Epperson.
Great to be here. Thank you.
We next have Ruben. Ruben is an architect, a fine art photographer, curator, creative director, and critic. His stature in the photo world has earned him awards, features in major media, countless exhibitions, and collaborations with photo icons. His work has been exhibited in numerous galleries, institutions, international art fairs, and published in New York Magazine, the New York Times, and the New Yorker. His photographs are in the permanent collections of El Museo del Barrio, the Center for Photography, the Contemporary Collection of the Mint Museum, the Bronx Museum for the Arts, School of Visual Arts, the Fitchburg Museum of Art, and the Museum of the City of New York. And last, but certainly not least, we have Diane Smith, a Bronx native of Belizean descent. She specializes in abstract art, sculpture, and installation. Her work has been exhibited in solo and group exhibitions at numerous galleries and institutions throughout the United States and abroad. She is an arts educator with teaching credits, including New York City's Lincoln Center for Performing Arts, Lehman College, Brooklyn College, Columbia University, Teachers College, City College, and St. John's University. Her private collectors include poet Dr. Maya Angelou, Broadway choreographer George Faison, Danny Simmons, Vivica A. Fox, Reverend and Mrs. Calvin O. Butts III, Cicely Tyson, Arthur Mitchell, Terry McMillan. Most recently, she has been commissioned by the Park Avenue Armory for its 100 Years, 100 Women project to commemorate the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote, 100 years after its ratification. Diane also has active exhibitions on view currently at Barnard College and also the Wallach Art Gallery at Columbia University, and she was a recent participant in the Harlem Black Lives Matter mural project. She currently lives and works in Harlem, New York. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Louis.
It's good to see you. Well, first I just want, and this is going to be a pretty, fluid, casual conversation, and I'll ask you a few questions. We'll have a little dialogue, and then we'll also monitor the chat. So we encourage all of our viewers out there to also place their questions in chat, and we'll bring them into the conversation as we're having this dialogue. And so I first wanted to just ask everyone a simple question, and it's really the premise of the exhibition. And the question is, what defines contemporary Black style? And if each of you could give me your take on that.
Epperson, do you want to start?
No, I was hoping you would.
I'll be the last one.
I don't know if there is, Black style is one note, that it can be defined as one particular thing. I think that's what makes style that comes from the diaspora so unique and exciting and thought-provoking. Because what you think is on trend today, there may be someone else in another part of the diaspora that adds something else to it and makes it a whole new thing. But that thing, it continues to circle back, and it's ever moving. It's not static. And that's the thing that I find most compelling about the way we move, the way we dress, the way we wear our hair, because I think style is all encompassing, from our vernacular to our dance, to our music, to our clothing. I think that it all sort of intersects. So I don't think it's a one note prescribed for Black style, and one way to describe it.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you,
Everything.
Epperson?
Yeah, she said everything else.
Everything she said.
Very good, Diane. Oh, okay. No, yeah, to add to that, it's basically, it's so broad. Like some people could say that it's one specific look. It's like a whole Afrocentric feeling, or it's, like it's a group of people that want to dress a certain way, but at the same time, and it seemed like now it's like everybody's doing any and everything. There's no in and out. It's basically, it's like I said, it was broad. It's just a mixture of what's working for you today. Like something is, like you get this amazing piece that's like, I'm wearing it today, and you could wear it, same piece you could wear 5 years from now because it's what you brought to it. So it's really broad. I would say that there's no one specific, it's hard to break it down into like Black contemporary style. Because everybody's part of everybody, So, Ruben?
Hi, everyone. My personal experience has been that basically I traveled for entire New York City, the 5 boroughs for the last 18 years. And what always fascinates me is that I see something on the tables at the vendors on 125th Street. And then when it goes deep in the neighborhood, it almost becomes something else. And then it reverses back. And then it goes out into mainstream. And I guess I'm so grateful to be part of this exhibition because I finally see that, people of color really taking ownership on something that, the media, the white media, I even posted an article about Anna Wintour admitting that they haven't done enough for people of color in fashion. And, that always bothered me. And that's what I started documenting, these people that are, I've saw along my travels for the city. But I really find fascinating that how these fashions have such a sense of uniqueness. And then they go into the mainstream media later on into the runway, and then you see other people claiming ownership for it. So I'm just happy that I started seeing really strong signs of really taking ownership and really having the acknowledgement of people who are inventing these new ideas and fashion and styling. So that's basically, for me, I like to document that. I'm very excited about seeing it, and it's a very interesting way how people like present themselves in the deepest parts of New York City with such, style and uniqueness. And I just find that very refreshing and unique, and I just try to put out there into the mainstream myself.
Thank you, Ruben. And, what I hear as a common theme, really, as I think synthesize all of your answers, a part of the inspiration for this exhibition is the Harlem Renaissance Centennial. And so, as you know, in 1919, that was the year that marked the return of the troops, the Black troops that had fought in World War I. And that, coupled with a literary movement, kind of led to what became this movement called the Harlem Renaissance. And what distinguished the Harlem Renaissance from earlier, because there had been movements earlier to that, and there were Garvey and Back to Africa was slightly before that. And so there were movements and there was an evolution, but now there was kind of a shaking off of kind of the expectation of others, whereas there was now was a new agency, and the expressions that were put forth were ones that were not solely curated for audiences to view, but more so kind of rising up from the inspiration from within. And so it wasn't edited, it was kind of what was and what became from the different players. And so, it moved from, kind of what was respectable to, what, we're gonna show you what might, some folks might consider folksy, what some folks might consider what happens late at night, all kinds of things. And so, this moment in time is really hearkening back to that. And I see evidence in your works, you may not yet, but in particularly, Diane, I'm gonna go to you first. The work that you presented and created for the exhibition, I think is perhaps the thread that connects us from that period to now. And I want to talk to you about that commission, that to me, first of all, when Souleo and I did our site visit for the space, one of the first spaces that we came upon was that 19-foot video wall. And we were both chomping at the bit, asking, the visual director, like, are we going to be able to use this? Can we use? And so we were just kind of holding our breath. And he's like, absolutely, And so, I already had an idea in my head of kind of the direction we want to go. But of course, that's the province of the curator. And sure enough, he had a similar inspiration, and that was to reach out to Diane to produce this seminal video work that would actually be the through line from this celebration to now in contemporary style. And so while you say, Diane, that we're not a monolith and it's different, like your work shows that. Talk to us about this work and talk to us about how do you identify over 300 images and then pull them together in that manner?
Through the tears and it wasn't that hard because this is rooted in my lived experience, right? It's rooted in who I am. I'm Black, I'm female, all of my hyphenated identities. I'm Caribbean, I'm Afro-Caribbean. And I grew up in a household with a mother who never questioned how beautiful she was. Every day of her life, I mean, everything that this exhibition is about, talking about rebellion, style, and joy, that was my mother. Every day, she took great joy in her beauty and never let anybody negate the fact that she was. So I had that as a really strong foundation, first and foremost. So I'm accustomed to looking at Black women and Black women's style from that perspective. And I have beautiful friends. I have beautiful women around me. So again, my lived experience, and many of them are in this video. So those two things was the springboard of how, and then I was in fashion. I was, I don't talk about this much, but I was a model. So all of these things were part of my lived experience. So it was easy for me to sort of dive into looking at who we are as a people in terms of style. And I've always had this kind of thing about how, and I think you kind of touched on this, Ruben, we are always renting our own culture from, the gatekeepers, if you will, from whiteness. They come into our communities and they may go to 125th Street and see some trinket. They may go to Haiti and see the Marchand women weaving on the side of the road, and then that becomes a bracelet in Donna Karen's collection, let's just say. Yeah. So it was kind of wanting to deconstruct that and bringing it back to home and where it is, and really showing how much we are and how intense we are, and doing that in such a way. It's really fast, and it's over 300 images and video, but it's done in a way that you leave wanting more, and hopefully the viewer then says, let me go find out some more, let me see more, let me understand, and let me see in the representation of that, right? And because it moves so fastly, anyone that's standing in front of it can see some glimpse of themselves in that video. So it was also very important for me to represent the array of who we are from a historical context, from our size to our skin tones, to our hair length, to our hair textures, to the multitude of styles and the way we move, from the way we stand. So I really looked deeply to find all of those things, to bring that narrative together in that video in like 2 minutes.
Excellent, thank you. So along those lines, we do have a question in our chat from Electra Weston. And her question is, how do you feel about the cultural appropriation of the style of Africa and her diaspora? Should we feel honored? Is there a way to fight back for at least recognition? Anybody want to address that?
Go ahead, Diane.
I'll be the last.
Okay, Diane, she's leaving it. She's punting it to you, Epperson.
Oh, I think
I'll jump in there. I mean, we could just have a conversation about this, Epperson.
Yeah. So the question is about cultural appropriation, and should we feel good about it, or should we, be exacting a price?
Well, I mean, I think, it's one thing when someone pays homage to something and give honor to the thing that they're paying homage to, but it's a very different thing when those things are used and extracted and people take ownership of it as though it appeared out of nowhere, and so that becomes problematic, right? And that's where the appropriation happens, and then you have that colonized feeling. That's what the colonizers have done, and that's what they continue to do. So the question is, how do we gain agency and efficacy when this happens, right? As a people. And I think it's fair to feel some kind of way when that is indeed the case. But we have to also be able to collectively find a way to hold accountable people that do this, and do this with no sort of this is an art piece, but I remember, I don't know if any of you, was it Damien Hirst who did the piece at the Pavilion during the Venice Biennale, where he had the huge African bust, and it was quite stunning and beautiful, but it's not yours, Exactly. It's not yours. So I think I feel some kind of way, and I express it, and that's why I make the work that I make. It's in response to those kinds of thefts.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because if I was to design, a Black designer does a collection with African fabric, it's looked at it like he's using African fabric and there's nothing special. But then Dior, she does a whole collection of African fabric and it's genius and it's it's sold out at Saks. Like how and why is that possible? It's like, we know where it came from. She knows she traveled and was inspired and came back and redid it. And it's totally acceptable, but it's still, it doesn't equal the same thing. The whole thing with homegirl doing box braids or something and renamed it and now it's fashionable. When I say homegirl, I'm talking about Kanye's wife. So it's like, yeah, it's one-sided. It's not like, oh, we should be paid for it, but at least
acknowledge. But I think this level, I think part of the issue is that this level of theft, this level of thievery happens across industries, right? Mm-hmm. And so until we can't look at this kind of thievery in just industry by industry, and I think that becomes sort of the issue, why it happens, why it's so perpetual, because we're dealing, we sort of compartmentalize it as opposed to dealing with the entire thievery of the diaspora.
Right.
That's what's happening.
And that goes back to privilege.
Right, because it's not, so for them, it's not theft because they own it, right? Because, it's a thing of waking up and just like, I'm entitled to, I'm just gonna take it. And we can think, with the professor just recently from Washington University, who went around as an Afro-Latina,
right.
a Jewish woman, right? She just decided that she was going to be Afro-Latina and she was going to take all of the benefits of that, right? So all of the grant money, all of the awards, all of the speaking engagements. She had a speaking engagement at Studio Museum, for Christ's sake. Like, all of these things, right? So, and I say this to say is that we have to think about these intersections. Like these things are not separate. And if we continue to deal with them as isolated incidents, we're going to continue to have this larger problem of this thievery. And we need to call it theft.
So, but how do you control that? How do you, really, I'm thinking, I'm an action-oriented person, right? I'm thinking, we can come up with a plan for that. Like, what is the plan? How do we, exact a price?
Well, I mean, in my case, I say with photographs, and I say with the title of the photographs. As you know, one of my photographs in the exhibition is not just another Vanilla portrait, because when I saw her on 125th with her handcuff earrings hanging and her hairdo, and and I know that this type of thing is going to be seen later on, grabbed by the white media or grabbed by the, I mean, what Marc Jacobs did a couple of years ago, grabbing the African outfits and then putting white models on top of that, I thought that was a double insult. So, I think that there's a way to just try to keep putting imagery out there. In my case, that's what I like to do. I like to keep it authentic, what I see it, and put it out there as I see it. Because to me, it's important to recognize who did it first and who did it better.
I think you're right, Ruben. And I think that what is sort of glorious for us now in this time is that we're living in a time where we have more control and access. So everyone talks about social media and all of the ills of social media. This is a time where we should take the control of our representation through that medium. Never before in our history, as people of color throughout the diaspora, that we've had tools that we can begin to say, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it, and we can put it out there. This, unlike any other time, we can do that. And the next thing is, I think, and I was talking to another artist about this, is how we move within our subcategories within the diaspora. And the hierarchy and the caste systems in which we move within those subcategories sort of have these sort of divides within us. So we don't always talk collectively about the power of what we're doing creatively in a very succinct way. And I just think thinking about those kinds of things is a way to sort of take back control and ownership from a larger scale of what we're doing. And having more conversations like this. And I think, and maybe because I am the age that I am now, my need to be polite about whiteness is not there anymore. My need to make white people comfortable is just not there anymore. And I think to have these kinds of conversations more publicly, to call, like, I know what you're doing, I see you, is probably, another way to go. I don't know that we're ever looking for monetary compensation in some reparation kind of way is ever going to happen. And how realistic that is, I think maybe again, our energies in preserving, documenting, and holding up what we make.
And with that being said, I think like with what's going on now, I think everybody knows what's going on now, and everyone knows that the other one knows what's going on. A lot of white people pretending like how do they feel this way? How I never knew. Or now they're reading books about it. It's like you're reading a book as to how you've lived your life while there's another human being right in front of you. Now you're gonna read a book about it. So it's like the old way. Everyone wants it to go for it to be normal, everything to be normal again. We can't go back to that because that wasn't normal. That's all we knew as normal. But now that we're aware and they're aware and we're all aware, it has to push forward from this point on because there's no going back to that.
Oh no, it's not. And I can tell you myself as an artist, and I'm going to disclose this now because it's ongoing. I'm giving a big gift to the Leslie Lohan Museum of Art, and the work is all people of color. I got sick of the gay naked white male being part of the collection, so I intervened, and I'm donating work that I did photographing RuPaul Drag Race, DragCon, all the balls, work that people had neglected for me to show in the last 18 years is all going to them, because I want to change the face. They want to change the face of the museum, and I want to break that mold. You know, I want to open the door. It's time for that. And so I'm doing that myself. Sometimes as an artist, if you have the means and if you have the influence, you just do it. So
I think you're absolutely right. I think you're right in that. You know, but let's talk about that for a moment and talk about that from understanding what people valued, right? So there are not many spaces that institutional wise that a person of color can go, here's my private collection, and they are willingly going to take it, right? That I mean, there's not a lot of that, and you know, and there's this idea of how things are valued, and value is based on how people decide to contextualize it. So the value of us in our urban cities and neighborhoods and how we move and our language, our vernacular, and all of those things seems to be of poor culture, right? Until it's recontextualized in a very highbrow way. And so now it's high culture. And so now this has a different kind of value to it, monetary, an aesthetic value, and a monetary value. Yes. So let's talk about that from the perspective of artists with bodies of work. How do we change, unless there is like the select few that have risen to a particular status based on the white gaze and notions of whiteness, you know, how do we do that?
Right. So wait, so I wanted to jump in here because, you know, there was something that was said, and Ruben, your comments triggered, you know, my thoughts. I was doing a tour yesterday, and your photographs are arresting, and they're arresting for a number of reasons. But one of the things I love is that as we talk about Black style, you know, I give the curator Souleo credit. He was very intent on showing, and we had conversations about like, what does it mean for there to be, you know, we talked about Black style, and this is Ruben's work on the screen right now. Mm-hmm. We talked about representation, and we talked about the narrative. And so, you know, I had a narrative that kind of started and thought about slavery. He's like, no, we're going back to Africa. And so he said, there is going to be a thread throughout this exhibition that takes us to our African heritage, and it's all inclusive. And so the screen, what we see on the screen now is some of Ruben's work. And so it's not only all inclusive from a time horizon, but also from a you know, person perspective, from a representation perspective. And Ruben, these images, talk to us about your subjects, and talk to us about your process. Are these kind of portraits that are staged? Or are these, you know, kind of live street shots that you have? Like, can you tell us what we're seeing?
Basically what I was saying earlier in the statement is that I'm a hunter. I go out there and find what catches my eye. I like, there's a term called quiet activism that I look for when I go deep in the neighborhoods.
Hey, Ruben, can I stop you for 1 second? Nadel, is there a possible way to pin the images that you are, that you have on screen so that everyone can focus on them? Okay, if you can continue, you can continue. I'm sorry.
Well, in this case, right now we have on display not just a vanilla portrait. I decided to do that because I was going to show that in a museum in Massachusetts, which I have a lot of issues as an artist to show. I just finally ended up with a museum show there. But the way I interpreted these people, I find them, you know, I go out and hunt them, and I see, is there something about them that gets my attention? I approach them. I like to make an environmental portrait of it. It's not staged. That person was standing exactly where I found the person, and I just took the photo. I take 1 or 2 photos. I don't do Photoshop. There's nothing done to them. They're real photos. I like to play with the light. And like these two, the two models they're shown right now, well, they're models actually in real life. I found them in Coney Island, and you know, they're both transgender, and they were fabulous in their bright rainbow bathing suits. And I said, I want to take a photo. So now they're getting modeling gigs from all this, by the way. I just wanted to let you know that.
Nice.
They were in Brooklyn Fashion Week. They made the best videos of going to the show. And, for me to do this for someone is the best thing that you could do for a person when you photograph them. Is putting their imagery and their personality out there. And that's basically, I'm a messenger. That's what I do. I see what I find. I like it. I think that I have to make some social activism with it. I'll do it. And by the way, this image is going to the Leslie Lohan. I included it.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So I have another question for you on this one. The one thing, the technology is amazing on so many fronts, but there's also a special patina. There's a special finish on your works, and it's because of the material you use. Can you talk to us about why you use that material, and what effect does that material yield for the folks that really can't see these in person?
Well, I'm very drawn to color and texture. That's something that I guess being studying architecture, I've been a designer. So I like this sort of perfect, thing that I just like to play with light. And I'd like to basically, the way I reproduce the work, I only use either Kodak Endura metallic prints, which is for the paper version. But then when I go into the dye sublimation aluminum, which is basically what you're seeing in the exhibition at Nordstrom, I really want the person not to have that glass, reflection and interference. I want people to really have a direct contact with the work as I saw it. Since I don't do anything to it, it kind of perfects that, that direct contact with the image. And for me, that's very important.
Ruben, these photographs reminds me of the 80s and the Peters back in the day.
Well, as I guess an older or seasoned gay man, I lived through all that, and I lived through the clubs. I was at Studio 54.
Yes.
I go from the same all the way back into now, but I wasn't photographing. What changed me was surviving 9/11, and I'm moving to Harlem. Let me make that clear. Moving to Harlem is the best thing that has ever happened to me, because that's when I started photographing. So my whole career as a photographer is being based here in Harlem. So
well, maybe you're channeling that time of being on the Pairs back in those days. I mean, Willie Ninja and I were like really good friends, and I hung out, like the Pairs were everything, thinking about style and fashion. I watched Pose for the first time, and just like everything about it was so real, and I just cried because it reminded me so much of that era.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that right now I was in Fire Island Pines at the end of the season, and I started photographing Black Fire Island in the Pines because there's a lot of people there renting houses and being free there. And for me, that I've been going there for 35 years, it's like, oh my God, so this is the sort of thing that catches my eye and I like to document. I take a segment that I find important, something that is emerging. The last time I went to Boston, oh my God, I went to school there 35 years ago. There's no Black people anywhere.
Yeah, now they're everywhere.
Now I see girls dressed up for brunch, and it's like, oh,
Wow. Ruben, you just said something that I was thinking. We were having the conversation about what we can do about appropriation, and not to extend it, but you just said something about documentation. Documentation is important because documentation, such as your work, which will be in institution, it will fix it in time, right? And it will, in terms of the owner and the fact that you captured it, anyone else who tries to do even wears what the young lady had, I mean, someone will be able to go back and say, Ruben did that here. Diane Smith, similarly, in terms of your vision, in terms of, the sense of style. Like, these exhibitions are a moment in time, and we have fortunately been able to have really good coverage on this thing, as well as a lot of photography. And so documentation is a form of resistance, but also a way of actually providing attribution. So just the thought. Now, I wanted to take one quick station break because we had a question in the chat And then Epperson, I'm coming to you next because there's a question that lines up with your vision I want to talk about. But the question was, who designed the unique face mask with the white lace worn by the tour guide? And that was posed by Kathleen Watson. And so while you all might have seen me texting, I literally was texting trying to get your answer, and I got it. And the answer is Zeph to Death. That's capital Z, E as in Edward, F as in Frank, to the number, Death. Zeph to Death is the designer of that face mask. Now, Epperson, the one thing that you have stated, you stated in the video, you also stated in I've heard you state before, actually one afternoon, I was in the pop-up shop and Epperson was there. And so I was trying to push my limits on my personal style. So I started trying on some of Epperson's items, and I really kind of got into it and took some pictures, and it was a lot of fun. But one of the things I noticed is that he actually has pieces that are clearly kind of repurposed, but also reimagined. And we have a question in the chat from Tammy, which says, African Americans thrive through improvisation and taking what we are given to repurpose. How do you see these concepts coming to life in fashion? I believe you kind of, your practice in your fashion, actually lives that. So can you talk and share on that a bit?
All right. Hi, Tammy. Okay. Basically, it's like a survival. It's like growing up, it's like 6 of us, right? So it's like hand-me-downs, you get your older brothers and you got this and you got that. If it makes it to you, you have a pair of corduroy pants, right? If you don't, you have a patch, you put patches on them. And I think, so it seemed like it's, again, survival, or like working with what you have and making something out of nothing. So it's like when I started with the upcycling, I buy a vintage piece and just reimagine it. It's like, okay, my designs, if you notice, none of them have buttons on it, but upcycle is, oh wow, I get to use buttons, and then I pop the buttons off and tie strings on it to make it a whole, one of a kind piece. So I think like what's happening now in fashion, there's a lot of well, since there's so much like sustainable fashion now, they're trying to focus on that. All of the garments that are used, like H&M and all these different stores make millions and millions and millions of garments, and they end up in a wasteland. So I think that now they're sort of incorporating this whole upcycling thing. So upcycle, I mean, it's the way I do it is basically, so it's like a one-of-a-kind piece. It's art. Only you have it, like the pieces that you tried on. The vest with the shirt with the vest connected. It's like, I want, my people to just throw something on and go. Don't think about it too much. I thought about it. So you can do it. You can just put it on and show us now. I don't know if I answered that.
No, you did. And I want to follow up because another kind of characteristic of your work is the thinking that, tradition and mainstream, it's time for us to deconstruct norms. And so I kind of see that blending as being, and you're kind of fusing things that may not seem to be adjacent as being kind of like a manifestation of that part of your practice as well. Deconstruction and really rejecting mainstream styles. Talk to me about that, and how did you get there in your approach?
See, that's not done on purpose. I'm not pushing from what's being done in mainstream. I'm just doing what I see. Okay. I started designing like in the early 80s when the Japanese designers came over. They invaded Kamikaze-san, Matsuda, that whole group, all that amazing group. And what they've done was they stuck to what they do, and nothing blocked them. So there was no limit. It's like, if everybody's doing red, they did black. If everybody did black, they may do red. Just to stay focused on what you're doing. And that's basically what I've done. I just evolved and evolved and evolved, and it's the same silhouette that I had in the 80s. You know, I just read an article, just happened to go on YouTube, and I read an article like 13 years ago, and I described the article the same way I described my new collection. You know, it's like warriors, it's the time that we're living in. And I was like, oh my God, it's the same, it's like exact words. You know, so it's like I stuck with what I know, you know, and there's no limit when once you know that you know that you know.
Right.
Can I just say something about that, Epperson?
Okay.
I've known you for over 30 years.
Yeah, we're like 3 years old, right?
Right, we were 3 when we met. And I mean, to that point, I could recognize your garments anywhere. That's number one. And
I think wait. I think you did recognize his garment when we came in for a one of the installation nights, and we were looking at your work. Epperson's work was already, it was on the mannequins, but yet we didn't have the labels or the signage up. And you was like, "That's Epperson's work." I
was like, and you know what I said, Epperson? I said, "Epperson, knock and come the garçon out." What I said. And I say that to say, you know, I bring up knowing you 30 years and knowing your garments and watching over the years, the evolution. So there's something very unique to have something evolve but stay the same.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and there has been a very strong evolution in your garment and your structure, but it is your pieces. They're your pieces. You know it's yours. And I think that's really hard for an artist to do. Change but stay the same. It's very hard for an artist or designer to do. So just wanted to make mention of that and sort of commend you on that.
Well, thank you. And coming from you, the artist of artists, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so one of the things, you know, Diane, you, speaking of just a riff off of Epperson, artist of artists, you know, I mentioned earlier that you currently have probably about 3 or 4 things on view, you know, between this and in Harlem right now. You know, talk to me about how you see, you know, these works as they are fulfilling a special place in the exhibitions. But to me, because I've seen them, there is a complete kind of consistency that I've seen out of your practice.
Consistency, even though everything is different, right?
Yeah, it's different, but there's definitely a nod to activism and your commentary on social justice in this current period. There's a sense of, you know, a respect and a reverence for the Black female and her, all that she yields. There is a love for your people that just runs like
absolutely deep. It runs deep.
It runs deep, you know. And so
I love Black people. Okay. Yes. I love everything about us. I tell people all the time, I live in Harlem and I can travel all over the world. But when I get back to Harlem, I know I'm home. I'm happy. I live for the trash chasing me up Lenox Avenue. I do. The sounds, everything. Energy. It really, I think I try, first of all, I make things based on what I'm feeling and thinking. I can't always articulate it verbally, but it's something that needs to be said. And so I think I make work for the people. You know, I'm not trying to be highbrow. I'm not trying to be over the top. I'm just trying to talk about who we are throughout the diaspora. Like I said, I think we're living in a time unlike any other where our voices need to be heard in such a way, and we have control over how our voices are heard. And I feel that my responsibility, I feel privileged to be able to articulate myself in multiple voices and in multiple spaces, and in spaces that a lot of us don't get to be in, let alone speak in. So I consider myself fortunate to be able to do that. So I take what I do quite seriously, like I believe all the panelists do, but it's in here. my love for Black people and my love for Black women, again, because I had a mother who loved herself unconditionally. I mean, and that's what I grew up with. So yeah, those.
What Ruben said, you know, it resonated with me in terms of like moving to Harlem was the best thing. I moved to Harlem in 2011, and you know, and I'm home. You know what I mean? And no matter where I go, I will go near and far, and people do this all the time. They'll take periods and stints and other places, but you're going to come back here and there's a different sense and a different feeling. And the one example of that to me was even during the pandemic, when every other part of the city just seemed to be dead and everything was shut down.
Yeah.
These streets in Harlem still had like a sense of feeling, you know. It didn't feel like it was the end. It felt like things were still ever present and living.
Yeah,
and
there's always a beat here.
There's a beat, right?
Right, and that's figuratively and metaphorically. There's always a beat in these streets, right? So,
Yes.
so that's the name of a piece.
So I'm going to bring this back then to kind of, you know, the exhibit, and this exhibit being presented at 58th Street or 57th Street in Columbus Circle. What I always like to tell people is you've heard of the famous Duke Ellington song, Take the A Train.
Yeah.
It is literally, while it is over 60 blocks, it is literally 8 minutes on the A train, one stop express. And so, you know, being able to show this work, I have a few thoughts about it, but I want to get your thoughts. Like, what are your thoughts about, you know, the difference of those 60 blocks and having this work on now what is being deemed Billionaires Row, where this work is at the base of the tallest residential tower in the world. And we have placed do-rags in the entrance and Diane Smith's in the other entrance, of where there's no mistaking of where you are. The space has been appropriated for our imagery, right? With over 300 images of Black women. Like, what does that mean for you all? And what have you heard from the people that really revere your work?
I'm not going first again.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ruben. I feel you, Ruben. Go on.
Yeah, come on, Ruben.
Okay. Well, for me, I always consider 125th Midtown. Geographically, it is Midtown, and it's Midtown for a lot of reasons. So, to me, 57th Street is downtown, and you know, and people don't understand that basically 125th is Midtown for Manhattan. If you look at it in terms of blocks and geographically, and the access from the Bronx, 125th is Midtown. So for me, having the word there, I think is groundbreaking. I'm happy. I love being part of the exhibition. I'm happy to be with all of you, and that a gallery in Harlem is celebrated in Midtown, and Nordstrom is taking such a big approach to embrace this. It was way overdue. You know, like I just said about Anna Wintour earlier, you know, it's way overdue. And it's just, I think that's a lot of great things are going to happen from all this. I think that if we sit together and we work together and keep putting works out there, I think that there's a lot more great things coming along the way. And that's our function as artists, you know. It's like what you said before, Diane, that the work is for the people. That's my formula with my work. I take the work from the people and eventually it goes back to them. That's what I donate to museums. The collectors will buy, believe me, they will buy, because I know what I have, not many people have. So once I sell X amount of images, I put it out there for the museums to have. That's my formula. And that's my way for me to disseminate the work into the mainstream. Because, you know, we all have it's not only making beautiful work, it's about taking the responsibility of it, you know, and the ownership. So that's my take on it.
I'm saying being born and raised in Harlem, like how you bounce around. I started out at 145th in Amsterdam. Then from there I was on the Grant projects, and then Morningside Avenue, and now I'm on, where am I? East Side. Right. So it's like, I'm like, where the hell am I? You know, so like now it's this amazing, like you said, one stop, to 59th Street. Like when I
Harlem One Stop.
no, totally. And it's like that one stop, I'm on 59th Street, I'm in the city. From that point, you can walk anywhere. And I've now I've walked Harlem, all the way downtown, from the West 4th Street, straight on uptown, World Trade Center. It was like a regular, so it's, for our work to be at Nordstrom, it's sort of like, I wasn't surprised. It seemed like this is our home. All that location that we're talking about is part of who we are, being from Manhattan, but being from Harlem and going down to 59th Street, it wasn't that much of a difference from like going to Soho. Going to Soho back in the day was like, wow, you're going somewhere for inspiration. Artists used to be, art used to be all down there, all the little mom and pop art shops, so that was a destination. But now it's like, since we're at 57th Street, like that seemed like that's the middle, and I think it's a perfect place. Every group of, there are a lot of tourists in town, but not as many as could have been.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we're at Nordstrom, all of the big stores and companies are talking about what they want to do for the artists, the Black artists, and for Nordstrom to actually have us there to promote them as well. But then to top it off, to have a pop-up, that was amazing. And, Louis, you, Souleo, and Nordstrom, like pulling this all together. This is the beginning of something that should have started a long, long time ago. And again, we can't go back to anything. We just have to keep moving forward. Okay, we did it here. Let's do it here. We can do it. This could be a tour. But
in FIT, I told Souleo that I could see that in FIT gallery easily. You know what I mean?
It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Any museum. It could be in all of the museums that your work's in. How about that?
Yeah.
That's true. Maybe I gotta work on that.
Diane, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so, I'm gonna circle this back to my mom. My first understanding of a model was my mother. She was a fit model in the 70s with a big afro. So again, understanding that there was something intentional, unintentional, rebellious about that. She was an immigrant woman from Belize, went into the garment district, became a fit model. And, some of the photos in the video is of her walking in a show with her big afro. And so coming to this point now, thinking about this work at Nordstrom and the idea of, okay, we're at Nordstrom, but it's something about being unapologetically Black that resonates with me in this. And no longer are we apologizing for the texture of our hair, the width of our nose, the fullness of our lips, the way we move, our vibrato, all of the things that would become the things that would have loss prevention follow us through a store, are now on display in such a store, in a department store.
Right.
As you say, on Billionaire Road. So there's that, right? But I don't want to get caught up or lost in this space of we have been let in,
Right.
I don't, while I appreciate not just this exhibition, but every time I am allowed space to show my work, I'm in deep appreciation of that. And I honor that because it doesn't happen for so many artists. And as Louis points out to me all the time, particularly during this time, because I've been really busy, I'm in complete honor of that happening for me. But I'm also, with honoring that, just want to be cautious in not feeling like I've been given something that I've always been entitled to.
Amen.
Yeah. I just want to be very clear about that. And can we just live? And if we had been allowed to just live, this would not be an anomaly.
Right. Right. But to see your work, Diane, and Ruben to see your work, and Epperson to see your work, and this is really kind of the substance of well, my good friend, man, she's so thoughtful, Deirdre Harris Kelly. She's saying, you know what, looking at the video, this work seems to just fit into this environment. And that's what everyone says. They say that it seems that it was almost kind of like made for it. And so then what does that say about the space that was created, one? And then, you know, what is the context? And how did the context of Nordstrom, a department store full of reproductions, and the pop-up store context influence your pieces? So did your pieces, did what you place in the store, you know, was it altered, or did it change conceptually from maybe doing a site visit to actually, you know, making a final decision of what you would offer for the exhibition? And then with that in mind, aside from the opportunity for these artists to be placed in context, how can these works still act as a creative intervention, which I think they just do? So, but how did the space define or influence in any way, and Epperson too with the pop-up, what you place in the store?
It didn't do anything. I mean, I feel like my work should have been there all along. So I just pulled it off the rack, and like mannequins right here, I could pull any mannequin right here and put them there.
I'm with you, Epperson. I felt that too.
And that's not doing that at all. I mean, even the sales associates, because some of them didn't even know that there was a pop-up. Just the other day, this sales associate was having a fit because she said she could have sold the cape several times. She didn't know it was downstairs. And I took her downstairs, and the morph, I tried it on her like 4 different ways. She went crazy. And why is it not here? I'm like, speak to that person, speak to that. And I've been speaking to different.
But let me say this, I got to say that as a partner and being all in, you know, that might have been just for the lack of, she was not at work at the right day. Because
Right.
one of the things I've consistently heard is that my people that I've known who've gone in there said, wow, it seems like any sales associate that I talk to, they can talk to me about this exhibit. And a part of it is they made space for us to come and talk to their employees before it opened.
Right. Well, she could have been that.
She could have been out that day.
And she called out sick that day.
Right.
Exactly.
And what I will also say is
A
too,
lunch.
you and Baseo's work really caused somewhat of a stir before we had the stanchions and before we had the labels, because the work on the mannequins being in place, I mean, the first weekend, I mean, I had the head of visuals calling me, we got a problem. I mean, what are we gonna, people are asking for these clothes. They want these clothes. They don't want the clothes that are on the rack.
Great message.
Right. Message. That right there was so telling.
Well, you know, that's again, you know, it's that, I mean, that's how I feel about it. You know, I feel like, you know, it's like we were just saying, like evolution, just keep, you know, building and building. I mean, my clothing were at Charivari 100 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I started dressing mannequins at Alexander's in Charivari.
Wow.
And I had my clothing there, you know, so I know that they could be there, you know, and like here, and I worked at Saks, so I know what the garments feel like. I know what they look like, you know.
And and there are a couple of people that aren't here, but you know, Bo McCall and the triple T-shirts,
Buttons.
the response to that, Baseo's dresses, you know, and the mask that match, you know, when you see them in the store and you see it, you know, against the other merchandise there, you're like, this should be here.
Right.
This should be here. And the response, I mean, we literally the first day we opened, we had intended that the items that were in the exhibition part for Bo's area, for the area where Bo's work is, that it would be there and fixed. And Souleo is you know, he's like a drill sergeant. So Souleo was like, no, this is on the checklist and this is what we're doing. And we cannot, just because this celebrity stylist called and want this, we're not taking it off of this mannequin. I'm like, Souleo, come on, we can change the shirt. Right?
Another one.
Right. So, I don't know. Ruben, do you have a thought on this? I'm sorry. I wanted to give you.
I mean, I just find, I think it's quite revolutionary. I think it should have been done, again, like I said before, it should have been done ages ago. And I'm just happy. It's a good moment to do this because we sort of in pause, and now everybody has more time to think and reflect. We know with that go, 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 go type of mentality. So I think it's in a way, it's also a good time for that to be out there, put into the mainstream for people to, digest it and process it and acknowledge because, as we all know, it's been out there for us and we witnessed it. I documented, a person creates it. Diane also documents it as well. And, and speaking of Diane's, I could stand there and keep clicking a camera like 100 times because the overlays, that's what I wanted to mention. The overlays between the old and the new are brilliant. Those, and I managed to catch some of those when I took a couple of portraits of Souleo there. But you could stand there and make an entire body of work of the overlays. It's just really brilliant the way you put that together. I just wanted to throw that in.
By nature, I'm a painter. And so even with my large scale installations, I think, someone said this to me before, you have a painterly quality of work as though it was something wrong with it, but I embrace that because of that painterly quality, the layering. And so I guess the common thread with all of my work is this kind of layering and intersecting and putting things together. So that was a consideration also, like really taking time of how the images would flow one after the other.
Yeah, and I was giving a tour yesterday, and I got to say that I've seen the work probably more than most people have seen it.
You probably saw more than me.
Right. I mean, and I am continually seeing things like, wait, I didn't see that before.
It is brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we only have a few more minutes. I wanted to first, there was a question. Has anyone here, this is probably maybe more for, this is Jenna Bond. Hey, Jenna. There is a question around, she has a question about the Black Style show at the City Museum in 2006. I wasn't born then, so I don't, that's like predates my like professional life in this. Does anyone, did any of you all see that show or have a reference?
Yes, I did.
I did.
Okay, so I'm gonna read your question. She says, would you talk about the context of time and place for this show compared to the Black Style Now show at the City Museum in 2006? The latter seems to be more of an encyclopedia, where this show is more specific. But given political and cultural waves, what was specific at that moment and what is specific to this moment?
It's all about the timing. I was in that show actually. It's the timing. Now everybody is on the same page of either learning or trying to figure it out or recognizing it. It's like, back then it was basically, I think it was like Puffy was running up, it was more like hip hop. And then they included different other artists in it. So it was just sort of like a statement. It's like, it's something different. It was in your museum up on Fifth Avenue. And I think that's what that was. But this right here, this time it's the world. It's not just one
I think you're right, Epperson. I think this feels more part of a larger movement.
Oh, because people are coming to see this. People will watch this video that we're doing now over and over and over and over because they're hearing the artist.
I mean, we talk a lot about representation and, sometimes that word get used so much that it can kind of get filtered down. And I think it's to be seen and feel seen.
Mm.
I think is, when I say it's part of this larger movement, the installation I did at Barnard based on For Color Girls, it's like the same concept. That work was written in the 1970s, and here we are having that same conversation, and it's so poignant. And Jacques did that work at a time where it was revolutionary and groundbreaking for a Black woman to talk about these issues surrounding women, Black women, but women more broadly. But it's poignant now, and how that work is being received now, just like this exhibition is being received now, it's a space of being heard and seen collectively, which is bigger for me than representation. Representation says you put an image somewhere and it's like, look, there you are, we represented you.
Right.
This is something more nuanced in the being seen and heard space.
Absolutely.
The way I mean, I saw the exhibition back in 2006, but the way I see it is something called the period before Obama and after Obama.
Absolutely, I would agree.
And, you know, I find that that was a very moment that they were trying to capture in specific, and I like the exhibition. You know, I think that the Museum of the City of New York has very fast forward thinking when it comes to, you know, most what really matters of being part of, you know, New York City. This one now, I think is almost like kind of like a more revolutionary and more, there's more activism, and there's also more refinement to it. That's the way I see it, you know, and it's also put on a timing that is, you know, started on Fashion Week, and we're going for all these different things right now that we are experiencing. So I thought that you know, they're hard to compare, but I find this one a little bit more revolutionary and more door opening.
Yeah, I find this
The world is, because the world is involved now. Before, you know, half of the world, they ignored it. It wasn't an issue. You know,
Right.
only a few people, compared to now, a few people saw that exhibit. Now the world is part of this. We're all breathing the same thing. It's totally different.
And I think, I mean, we have a different level of how we're engaging with digital media is very different than how we engaged with the digital media back then. And I think that changes how things are perceived and received. Had we been engaging with digital media back then the way we are now, and how that show would have probably been pushed out in the ways in which this one is. Now, if we switched the timing of these two shows, we may be having a different conversation about the visibility of this, right? So visibility also to a certain degree creates a different level of meaning. It creates a different level of context with the amount of visibility something gets.
Yes.
Do you all have any final parting thoughts that you'd like to make? I think that, you know, we've been very blessed to have your participation and your artistry and the gift of the objects for presentation. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to make a statement as we begin to close out.
Diane? No, okay. Okay. No, okay.
And,
like
then, excuse me, I wanted to, you know, there was one question that maybe as you provide your answer, if you could also include, and this might be a guide for you with your answer, is do you have any post-election plans as an artist? For this, so what's the future? What does the future look like for you beyond styling?
Okay, living. We got to, no matter what happens, we got to continue who we are, to recognize who we are, no matter how crazy. We don't, at this point, we don't know what's going to really happen, but we just have to stay focused to who we've become and just keep going forward. And like I was saying, as far as my going back to how consistent I've been and where I am and where I've been at time, we just completed at my spring 2021 collection, and it's basically what we're talking about and going. It's like the time that we're in now, the whole pandemic time, and going into the future. So this is almost like a plug. YouTube, Epperson, and you'll see my future. Look into my future.
Look into you.
Go on, Diane.
What was the question again? I got lost.
What is any final thoughts, post-election plans, or your ideas for the future? I'm giving you a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
And then Mark, hey Mark, this is Mark from Nailu, who asked also.
Okay. Hi, Mark.
It's also about the future, and that is fueling younger generations as artists.
Okay, let me do this real succinctly. So, what I'm hoping, based on this entire exhibition, not just my work, is that collectively, people of color, we really take notice of how we are being seen in this world and how much control we now have, how that happens based on the tools we have at our disposal and what we share about ourselves in public. And I mean this in terms of social media. We have such power now in how we're seen. I like to say that others have the market cornered, and all the derogatory things and all the bad things that is out there, they got the market cornered on that. On that, we have some control over. Back to how some of this conversation started about people taking what's ours and using it as though it's not ours. So this is how we begin to gain our power and our control, our efficacy in that, is how we share and show things about ourselves. In terms of after the election, I got my stick with the sheet tied to the back of it because I'm gonna be running out of here. My little bundle running out of here. I don't know. I just got my passport back. I don't know. If, you know, things don't go a certain way, I may need a little timeout. So there's that. I voted this morning, but there's that. And yeah, I just hope that as we move forward, that we continue to nurture one another throughout the diaspora, take care of each other, support one another, and think more critically about who we are as people and appreciate all the things that we are, the beauty, the joy, the pleasures, and everything that we are. Again, everyone else has the market cornered on that other stuff.
Okay, come on, Ruben, bring it home.
Well, I mean, I'm basically, what I look forward is continuing, you know, putting out there images that we don't see mostly, you know, in the marketplace. I'm a very market-driven person. You know, I come from I've been a collector of photography for almost 25 years. And I moved here in 2001 to Harlem. And what really started motivating me to photograph was because I did not see images that I was seeing on the street live. And that's what really motivated me to start photographing them, because I guess I was selfish. I don't want it for myself first. But then I started realizing that they were not in the marketplace, and some of them were not even there to begin with. And they were made by Helen Levitt and Bruce Davidson and people way back. And I said, well, this is a chance for me to start doing something about it. And I feel very grateful that I'm able to give a voice to people that they sort of felt marginalized for decades. And I use all my influence that I can have in the business of photography, and I want to keep pounding opening doors, and I want to keep putting images out there for all these people that I find in their own natural environment, being so wonderful and amazing and being so real. And I could just steal their soul for a few seconds and put it in a photograph. And that's the best feeling in the world, because when you put it out there and somebody reacts to it, and when you could increase the traffic in a museum, like I did with an image at the Mint Museum in North Carolina, that is this girl with a skin condition, and I could put it on a billboard in Los Angeles, when I could have a kid in a hot summer and being able to win a competition and have it on a billboard in Los Angeles. To me, that's what really matters about this, because, you know, the art it's coming from the street, from the people, and it's got to go back to them. So that's why, after I satisfy the market needs, you know, of the gallery system and everything like that, I make a point of just bringing it back to where it belongs, to the people. And as far as after the election, I'm going to continue doing what I, did for the pandemic. Keep working and keep doing exactly what I do. Nothing's going to change till the day I die. This is my my goal in life, just put images out there that move people, that you relate to them, and that's what really matters.
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Epperson. I will emphasize that this exhibition will be open from Monday through Thursday. The hours will be 11 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. and it closes on Thursday, October 29th, in 4 days at 7:30 p.m. All of the works in the exhibition and the wearables, including the wigs, are for sale. Please visit www.stylingblack.com or visit the pop-up shop in Nordstrom's on the 58th at the 58th Street entrance for the wearable items. You can also visit the artsy viewing room by going to www.stylingblk.com to access the works online or to contact the gallery. Proceeds from the art sales benefit the artist that we have here, as well as the Howard University Art Gallery and student programs in the art department at Howard. And that's a contribution from the Long Gallery of Harlem. Many people realize we've been talking about the Harlem Renaissance, but one of the primary instigators of the Harlem Renaissance was Alain Locke. And Alain Locke, the author of the anthology New Negro, was the head of the philosophy department at Howard University for many years. And the art gallery at Howard continues to hold his African art collection, which was his inspiration for the art or the works in the New Negro. And hence the link and why we are looking to actually be stewards of and support, assets and works that define the culture and our heritage. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. I want to thank Yuen Chin, a great partner in all her efforts at Harlem One Stop and the Cultural Collaborative. Thank you, Nadal, for all of your technical support, for making sure that this runs really smoothly this afternoon. And thank you for all of our panelists and all of our guests for joining and listening in. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.